Hello and welcome to another episode of the Choose Strong podcast. We are your hosts, Eddie and Sally, and as always, we are very happy that you pushed play today. We got a special episode today. I first want to say hello to the kiddos, to our youth. How are you? I'm looking at you at YouTube right now, giving you a big wave. It is October now. Happy October, friends. We are now in the last few months of 2024, and so I hope that whatever you are doing right now, whether you are running, you've stepped into the gym, or you're driving along, prepping dinner, I hope that in your mind somewhere you have plans made. You have plans to think about what you had wanted to do at the beginning of this year. You need to go back. Need to go back in that journal. Need to go back on that whiteboard, calendar, wherever it is where you had envisioned a goal, a dream, or something that you wanted to accomplish this year. And you get to ask yourself, did I do what I set out to do? Now, Eddie, we know that life is full of surprises. It is full of things that we just, year to year, that we don't expect and we can't foresee. And that is a part of life. And so I love this time of year to reflect. I know me personally, I did a post on this just a couple days ago. Every fall, I like to get a sketchbook, a big 8.5 by 11 blank paper sketchbook, typically something that an artist would use to draw in. Or I get that thing and I start making plans. I start making plans for the next year. I start dreaming. I pour out my heart and mind on that thing. Sometimes I draw and color and write poetry, but really it's for me. And I have got a pile of these books. And what has been fun is going back at the beginning of 2024 and looking at some of the plans that I had made for myself. And one of those plans we're going to be talking about today, because this is part 2 of Project Mammoth, where we are going to be concluding all the information and the details about this project. But this practice has been really motivating for me over the years, because what I put in those books is for no one else except me. And I really feel like there are times throughout the year where I can open up that book and just be reminded of where I'm going, why I'm doing it. And, sometimes we need to lock back in. So for some of you that are feeling the weight of the end of the year already, that's the beginning of the school year, you've gone back to work. If you were taking summer vacation, maybe you're looking toward a race. Whatever it is, I just want to start this podcast by encouraging you in your work. We all got work to do, and no one else can do it for us. And so whether you got 5 minutes today or 4 hours, get to work, do the work. I promise you it's worth it. And with that, Ed,
yeah,
I'm going to dive right into something that's really heavy on my heart. This morning, I got to have a Zoom call with my good friends, Jason McDougald, who is the executive director of Camp Grier, located in Old Fort, North Carolina, and my good friend Brandon Thrower, the race director, founder, CEO of Tanawa Adventures. Brandon puts on some of the best and, most incredible races on the East Coast. Yes, I'm biased. And, these are friends of mine who have been enduring the effects of Hurricane Helene. And they've been heavy on my heart. I was very grateful to get in contact with them. I wasn't sure if Wi-Fi and cell phone was going to go through. Had talked with some other friends that are over there, just making sure that they were okay. Listeners, wherever you are in the world, I imagine that you have heard on some degree the massive devastation. I believe in North Carolina alone, the death toll is up to 130. The devastation that this hurricane has caused will likely just take a long time to even document. Mm-hmm. But if you look at pictures online, Man, it's hard to keep a dry eye. And Jason and Brandon are some of my favorite people. I call them my East Coast family. You see, back in 2016, actually it was 2015, Jason had reached out and he was like, I would love to have you come to Camp Grier, which is, if you've ever heard of Camp Grier, we will be putting some very special links in the show notes today. So I do encourage you to check them out. But campgrier.org, they put on and have been putting on for, gosh, I want to say like 80 years or something like that, these incredible youth camps. And they run all summer, June, July, August. And I love them because you can sign up for these camps, but they also bring in kids who maybe would not be able to afford these type of camps. So they have scholarships that bring kids in, and our kids have done the camp. Mm-hmm. Isaiah did it twice, Mackenzie did it once, and they stayed in the cabins. And Jason is he's a big thinker, and he's always looking at ways to grow and make this camp better. And really, since I've known him, that has been his heart. He works so incredibly hard. He'd probably be embarrassed to know how much I'm highlighting him right now because he does not like to be in the limelight. Same with Brandon. Probably another reason why I love working with these guys. They're just hard workers, and they have both built up some pretty incredible, camps, trails, businesses, nonprofit in the last, ever since I've known them and before. And the work that Jason has been doing in this camp for many years, he was like, hey, it'd be great to introduce kids to trail running. Could you come out next year and offer a trail running component to this summer camp? And the summer camp has all different activities. There's horseback riding, and there's kayaking, and there's rock climbing, and mountain biking, and it's super cool. Isaiah loved it the couple years that he went. It was so much fun, and it's very much like camp. It's not glamorous. And so I said, yeah, why not? He brought out our whole family. I remember this. It was just amazing. And treated us very well. And this is where I met Brandon. And Brandon at the time was a PE teacher and loved the trails. I mean, if you know Brandon Thrower, if you get on the trails with Brandon, his passion and love for the trails just comes out of every pore of his body. You get to the top of a climb and he's going to point out every single peak. He'll probably have stories to go alongside it. He loves being in the mountains. And anyway, that first year, Brandon and I were the coaches of this kid's little trail running camp. I think we maybe had like 4 or 5 kids sign up for our little branch of the camp. And we had the best time. And I had a wonderful time getting to know Brandon, getting to know Jason. And one day after lunch, they were joking about, man, we got to do this for adults. We should do trail camps for adults. And a little light bulb went on in my head, and I thought, I would actually love that. That would be amazing. What does that look like? And by the next year, 2016, we launched our first WNC trail running camp, Western North Carolina trail running camp. It's about 20 minutes outside of Asheville. And we then went on to do that for 6 years. And we expanded to New Mexico. We did a couple in Oregon. My favorite was Western North Carolina. I think, Eddie, you remember every time I came home, I was like, can we move to North Carolina?
Yep. I do remember that.
Yeah. So that didn't happen.
No. Well, because every time you go anywhere, you come back and you say that. So
This is true. Brandon and Jason were the backbone of those trail camps. They pretty much did all the work. And then I came in with throw pillows, rugs, and gifts from my sponsors. I'd arrive in North Carolina and decorate those cabins. And we were a team. We made a lot of new friends, and friends that we still are in contact with today. And yeah, so I love my team on the East Coast. Love my East Coast family. I love the memories, many memories, and time, the years that I spent out there. And so watching this devastation that is Hurricane Helene unfold has been really difficult. And when I finally got to talk with them, I was just, what can I do? I don't know what I can do from here. Please tell me what I can do. So this is my first step in wanting to be helpful. One thing that Jason, Brandon, and I talked about this morning on our Zoom call was, there is no community like the ultra community. And we know how to come together. We know how to help each other. We really care about people, our community, the trails. Fun fact is that Jason and Brandon were able to get an additional 20 miles of trails built out from the back of Camp Grier, right there in Old Fort, which in turn opened up 17 businesses. And Old Fort, which is typically an overlooked part of Western North Carolina because Asheville's like right there, started to really blossom. I mean, Jason was just so excited saying, man, you see people here at their sprinter vans and mountain bikes, like every week, there's people everywhere like this. We got new breweries and coffee houses, like it's growing. And I know they're working on an additional 20 miles. So these dreams and plans that they have been working on for, over a decade, were coming to fruition. They're watching them thrive. And then this wall of water, gosh, it's hard. It's hard to talk about it without tearing up here. But I think listeners, we can all relate to moments in our life where things are coming together. That dream or that goal that we've been working toward is within grasp. And then something tragic, something sad, something terrible happens and completely flips our world upside down. And I think that's probably the best way to describe what is going on. And I know it isn't just North Carolina. I want to make sure I highlight that. We've talked to other people that live in other areas. Just spoke with our friend Daniel in South Carolina. So we've been trying to keep tabs on what's going over there. And so I'm inviting you listeners to, we can all take a moment and click on the link. Maybe you can give in the amount of a cup of coffee, a lunch, whatever you can give. I know that right now, Red Cross is being stationed at Camp Grier. That's how amazing that location is. So they are being stationed at Camp Grier. They are feeding people. They are housing people. They need diesel. I mean, they'll take any donations they can possibly get. But if you click on the link in the show notes here, you can give directly to those efforts. They have people working around the clock in the kitchen, just feeding people. And so, and I know at some point, Brandon is going to go and take a look at all his trails where all his races are. And Brandon's a dad to 2, 4, and 6-year-old girls, and this is his livelihood. And I imagine that at some point he is going to need about, 10, 20, 30, 80 days of trail work to happen. And I know that East Coast running community is very strong, and so we'll be pushing out when those days happen. But Brandon, Jason, and I, we kind of had like a fun little idea for something that we will be doing in December in North Carolina. And we will share more on the next podcast about that. But for now, if you feel so compelled, if you can help in any way, click the link. And I know they would really appreciate it. So
yeah. Pretty devastating.
This episode is brought to you by Manukora Honey. Are you looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine? Are you a honey fan like me? I love honey. One of my favorite things is a peanut butter and honey sandwich, in addition to any type of tea. I love to add honey. Now, you have to try Manucora honey. It is on its own level. It's rich, creamy, and the most delicious honey you've ever had. Manucora honey contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health. See, the bees collect the nectar from the manuka tree in New Zealand, and the nectar is packed with bioactives, and the honey that is produced has 3 times more antioxidants and prebiotics than your average honey. And a special antibacterial compound called MGO also comes from the nectar of the tea tree. Manucora third-party tests every single harvest for MGO and makes these results available through their QR system. It's a game changer. And now it's easier than ever to try Manucora honey. Head to manucora.com/Sally to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus a Manuka honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. That's manucora.com/SALLY.
Moving on. Let's chat. We're moving. Actually, we're heading out to Banff, Canada tomorrow.
First time ever to
First
go.
time to Banff.
First time to Banff. Isn't it, you just like saying that name?
Saying Banff.
You like saying Banff. And is it because it kind of sounds like Mo Bamfin? I'm not
Mo
sure.
Bamfin.
Yeah. So we are going to Banff, Canada, right there in the Canadian Rockies.
Gosh, I can't wait.
You know, I think it's a pretty iconic place if you are an outdoorsy person. You know, the national parks there and the lakes are just absolutely stunning. It is a place that I was planning to go to in 2020. I was going to do a race up in that area. I was going to actually do 2 races, and it was to be my first time in that area. I've raced in Canada before, but this is a particular area that I've always wanted to go to. So very grateful that we get to head out. Now, we're bringing Isaiah with us too. Mm-hmm. And Eddie, why are we bringing Isaiah with us to this trip?
Well, we're actually going. Let's just talk about why we're going, first of all.
Yeah, we didn't say that yet, huh?
We're going because, Sally, you are speaking to a group of 400-ish doctors. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to follow that up with, how in the world did you land a gig that you get to stand in front of 400 doctors and share?
Well, as a buddy had joked with me yesterday, he said, "Are you going to try to convince them that what you do is healthy? Because that's not going to work." I thought that was really funny. This opportunity came to me because recently I got added to a roster of world-renowned speakers. I think it's just kind of like the same way that I think I got signed by Nike, just a good luck chance that I got picked up, because you look at the other speakers on this roster and I'm like, something is different from the rest here. One of these is not like the other, and that would be me. But very, very grateful. I'm on the roster for Powell speakers now. I think the more familiar faces on there are probably one of the top speakers in the world, which is Mel Robbins. So it was because of the trail running community that someone reached out to me and happens to work for Powell Speakers. And we were on a trip last year in Nashville, Tennessee. I was going to be on, Nick Bear and I were doing a podcast, and she just so happened to be in the exact same location. And I thought, oh, this timing's really interesting. Like, she's reaching out. I'm literally going to Nashville. Speaking, I have done speaking engagements for over 20 years, but not on this level before. I love to speak, and, at the drop of the hat, I'll walk up onto stage and, we can do a Q&A or a fireside chat or just kind of chat about one topic. It's something that I have enjoyed doing. It's partly why I went into communication studies. I remember thinking when I was like freshman, sophomore, like, how do I become a public speaker? I think the passion that I have is if I can have an opportunity to encourage people, then I want to do it. So, and that's not to say that I don't get nervous and full of, you know, little anxious here and there, but I really do love doing it. So this particular event, you know, came to me. I think it was like last spring they had reached out. And so Powell speakers are the ones who manage me. And we've been recently just starting to book more engagements, which is just wild to me because I'm speaking to groups of people that I would say is kind of out of my comfort zone. You know, you put me in front of runners and athletes, like I could speak all day, like totally comfortable. But, you know, I'm going to go and stand before highly academic, very smart doctors. And, but no, that's good. I think at the end of the day, I like to just speak on a very real human level. So I am looking forward to this. In 2025, the calendar is already filling up. So I'm super excited, Eddie, for you to join me in some of these places. We are traveling all over the United States next year. And it is genuinely a dream come true because it is something that I've been pursuing since I was a teenager.
Yep.
And, you know, I think this is probably a running theme in what it is that we're going to be talking today. Just the quiet, hard, long road of pursuing the things that are in our heart and that we love and that we dream about. And, you know, Project Mammoth falls into that same vein. So, we will be heading up to Banff for like 4 or 5 days. Eddie we don't know if this podcast is going to hit while I'm there, but if it is, I want you to know that Eddie is actively seeking out a location where we can do an impromptu meetup. And so we would love to go on a little 4 or 5K run, grab a cup of coffee, or if we do it in the afternoon, we'll probably end like at a brewery. You found a couple locations that are named Sally.
You know what? There just happens to be a place called Downtown Sally.
Downtown Sally. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Out of all places, yes, I found it. It's called Downtown Sally with coffee. So I thought that might be fitting. Might be a good place to meet.
I think we need to go there. So
might be a good fit, you know.
So we don't want to give people these grandiose expectations that there's lights and glamour and a well thought out route of running. It'll probably just be an out and back from the coffee house. I will care more about the coffee and sitting and chatting with you, my friends, than where we're running in that moment. Now, don't get me wrong. We are going to be exploring. We have extended our trip by 2 days so that I can get on some time on those trails. So if you are in that area, which, what are we looking at? Alberta, Calgary, Banff,
Canmore. Yeah, there's
Canmore.
Calgary's about an hour and a half away. But yeah, that general
That's
area.
Not bad. Come on
for some Downtown Sally action.
Yeah,
it's worth an hour and a half.
Yeah. I told Eddie, I'm like, I'd be stoked if 2 people showed up.
Hey, me and Isaiah. Well, depending on how early it is, we might be there.
Oh, you are not. You are not bailing on me.
Okay, well then that's 2 right there. We'll be there.
Yeah. So if you hear this, we're hoping that this drops either Friday morning, Saturday morning. We will be meeting on Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, yeah.
Which is the 5th. Is that 5th or 6th?
Yes. Either. Yeah, it's the 5th. No,
yeah,
6th.
It's the 6th. So October 6th.
Yeah.
The best way to keep up with updates on that is to go on the Choose Strong podcast Instagram.
Yeah.
And then also our Choose Strong strength group in our Choose Strong group on Facebook. Those are the best ways to keep up with the details as Eddie will be managing all of that.
Yeah, I'll upload it. Yep, that'd be fun. Be good.
Yeah, very excited, Eddie.
Yes.
You're Canadian. McRae's are Canadian.
I'm going back to my roots.
Yeah, you're going back to your roots.
Yep.
But, I missed you and Isaiah so much when I was in the Eastern Sierra training. And I'll tell you what, I was not about to leave Isaiah again for 5 days to go to Canada.
Yeah,
so
we're bringing him.
I was like, coaches and teachers probably aren't happy with that. But you know what? YOLO and family is the most important thing at the end of the day.
That's right.
And the things that he is missing are not part of his upper goals and where he is going. Isaiah's our goal. He is our visionary man. He knows where he is going and what he wants to do with his life. And I absolutely love that about him. And so that's always something we have to weigh. I think all parents always have to weigh that in, once your kids are involved in sports and clubs and school, it's like, okay, what are we missing? And so for us, we're like, hey, this is your first time to Canada, out of the country. This is a beautiful place and just an amazing opportunity that we get to have together. But also, let's be honest, Eddie is a massive hockey fan. No, I'm not going to say which team, especially for our Canadians that are listening, because I heard that, ice hockey is kind of like a religion. And so if you're for one team and they're for another, you might not get some good juju there. So I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but the boys will be heading out. And the way that Eddie put it to me is, Sally, we'll go to a hockey game and then you can just stay back and practice your speech. So I do appreciate that, by the way. I do.
So Isaiah and I were going to the Calgary Flames game, playing the Winnipeg Jets. And I'm excited. Go see some Canada hockey in Canada. It's big time.
I'm very excited about that. You and Isaiah enjoyed a hockey game earlier this year. I know that was a Christmas present that you gave to Isaiah, and you guys had the best time together.
Yeah, we had a blast.
And he's been asking ever since when the two of you are going to go to a game again. So I just think that's really sweet. I love the dad-son time together and how unique you get to... You get to enjoy it in another country,
taking advantage,
the ice hockey mecca of the world. So, that's super cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, can't wait.
Now, in other McRae news, I just need to point out that Eddie got to go to Flagstaff and watch Mackenzie race.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
And I didn't.
I had a blast.
And I think I was trying to FaceTime and Snapchat every other minute. And both the kids started making fun of me because I was doing it so much. They're like, oh, my gosh, Mom wants to be here so bad. And I was like, yeah. But that was pretty cool. I mean,
pretty cool. Yeah, it was very cool. Got to see Mackenzie, so it's great.
NAU has been consistently ranked number 1. Sometimes they're tied with NC State in cross country. Their team is amazing, and so the 3 freshmen, Kiki, Peyton, and Mackenzie, they have chosen to redshirt that this year. And so we're kind of still learning all the ins and outs of redshirting. But what they are able to do is they can race unattached. So they can't wear the NAU kit. They can't even drive with the team.
Or stay with the team.
Or when it's in the window of competition. Because once it was nighttime, well beyond the race, they were able to drive home with them on the bus. But what Eddie did, and this is why I was not able to go, he flew to Phoenix, waited almost 2 hours in line for his rental car, drove almost 3 hours from Phoenix to Flagstaff because there was 2 accidents on the freeway, arrived at 8 o'clock at night or like 7:30 at night to Mackenzie, who is anxiously waiting to go out to dinner. You guys went to a wonderful dinner together.
Yep.
You then got up the next day, and as soon as you were about to head out for a run, your daughter called you and said, Dad, I just got done training. Can we go to breakfast together? And
so
what do you think?
As much as I wanted to go out and do a run, I said, oh, this is really tough. It's a tough decision.
Was it tough? Was it like, I need to get my training in? Because I know you.
It was a rough decision at that point, but I opted to skip the run and I went to breakfast with my daughter.
As the kids say, you left her on red for a good 30 seconds before responding.
It was a tough decision.
Yeah.
But I think I made the right one.
I think you did too.
I think I did.
And the picture that you sent me of her across the table of you, we'll put the picture in the YouTube. Mackenzie doesn't watch this. She doesn't watch this. This look, and I think parents, you can agree with this, the look of your child after they've got done training, so whether it's after football practice, soccer, in this case, Mackenzie running, when the hair is all tasseled and their face is like a little red and like they've been weathered. They've been outside.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite. Mm-hmm. And she's got this big smile and she's looking back at you across the table and like, I may have teared up seeing that.
Really?
I may have teared up. I did. I think I teared up all the entire week because I wasn't there, but was just very happy to know that Mackenzie was getting time with her dad. So you had breakfast with her. You went to work at a coffee house that had horrific Wi-Fi, to which we talked several times and you were frustrated.
A little bit. A little frustrated.
And then you packed in Kiki, Peyton, Mackenzie into this little rental car. And how was that 5-hour drive back in the opposite direction? You were heading to Tucson.
Yeah, we went down to Tucson.
You went down to Tucson. So we just think about the many hours that Eddie spent in a very short 20 hours driving.
In the car, yeah.
Now, as you neared Tucson, this relatively brand new Dodge decided to break down.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with me and rental cars, but
it was call after call to me, and I was like, everything about your trip is a nightmare that I'm so glad I'm not there for. You know, I'm still recovering.
You know, it was actually a fun 5-hour drive with those girls, to be honest.
Fun and 5-hour drive. I'd rather run.
No, the 5 hours with these girls, especially with your daughter you haven't seen, you get to hang with them, you get to chat with them, listen to music. They were doing homework, they were singing. We had fun. So the 5 hours was up, and I'm literally turning into this parking lot
into their
where
destination.
I'm dropping off Peyton to meet her parents at the Doubletree Hotel. Literally in the left turn lane, about to make a left, and then this brand new 2024 Dodge, or what was it called? The Dodge, Rocket or Dodge.
Okay, there's the keywords right there.
Yeah.
Dodge Rocket.
No, it wasn't Rocket.
Okay,
Hold on. It was.
Sounds like that was branded by Walmart.
Dodge Hornet. It was a Dodge Hornet. I promise.
Yeah.
2024 Dodge Hornet had 13,000 miles on it. All of a sudden, it starts flashing service engine, and it's a hybrid and service engine, and then says undrivable. Like while I'm turning into the part, so it basically stopped. So I turned off the ignition, and I tried to turn it back on, and it wouldn't go back on. And anyways, long story short is that Peyton's dad was like literally right there looking at us, and he comes out, pushes us into the parking lot, put it in neutral, put it there. So and then so then I called the AAA tow truck, and they came like 2 hours later, as I was waiting. And
you arrived like 7 at night?
Yep, 7.
7 o'clock at night. So he had driven all day, was anticipating checking in and going to dinner.
We were going to go have dinner and check in. And Mackenzie wanted to get to bed by like 9 o'clock because they had to be up at 3:45.
Oh, she shut me down because I started texting. She's like, Mom, I'm going to bed. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, for a shakeout run at 4 because it was supposed to be 3 hours before the race.
Yeah.
So she had to get up at 3:45. So she wanted to go to bed. And here we are without a car at 7 to 9 o'clock. So anyways, long story is that I hitched a ride with the tow truck driver, and he drove me to the airport where we dropped that beat-up car that's not working for a new, I upgraded to a van. Yeah, so I was stoked.
Another reason I wasn't there.
It was a white van. It kind of brought me back
to
the good old days. So I got this van and went on my way. So I got back to the hotel by 10:15 actually. So it was a 3-hour thing, but hey, whatever. Just another adventure in a rental car. So,
listeners, one of Eddie's strengths that I've always admired is his endurance and patience. And every time I talk to him, he's like, "It's a bummer, but I get to be here with Mackenzie." And I thought, what a perspective.
Yeah, if Mackenzie wasn't there, I would have not been very happy. But
well, you arrived, and I think at 7:30 it was 102 degrees.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was super hot.
Like this
as soon as the car died and
volcanic
it went off,
heat.
we were all stuck in the car, and it was like super hot. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking that trip.
Yep.
I was, however, very jealous, and so after we get back from Canada, I am taking a solo trip to visit Mackenzie and run in the mountains of Flagstaff. So
as soon as you let me know the dates, I doubt if it'll be solo. I'm just saying. I might get back there.
Oh,
might get back up there.
Well, we should keep moving around along here.
Yeah,
That is
let's
enough
do it.
of McRae
That's enough.
news.
That's a lot.
And we just want to kind of give some big shout outs right now because there's a lot going on in the Choose Strong community. We've got some sweet messages that have come through. I actually shared a few on my story the other day. You know, some of these messages make me cry, Ed.
Yep.
And
great. They're
really
great.
appreciate you guys sharing your lives and your goals with us. So we could probably make a whole series of just reading some of these stories. We should have story time, Choose Strong story time, because I don't know how you're able to dial it down and only pick a few of these, but
yeah, it's very hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So the first one I want to do is I like to do like a review, like a legit submitted review. So the first one is from the Apple podcast review. It's by iRun13 by Ken. It says, thanks for sharing the run. Been following Sally on social for years. Read the book. Now, most recently, started listening to the podcast. Great camaraderie between Sally and Eddie. Enjoy the insight and the laughter that goes along on my run. Ken. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for listening, dude. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Yes, I do. And appreciate him actually taking the time just to give a kind review. It goes a long way, man. Appreciate it. All right. Sarah, I want to highlight Sarah. Sarah Brooks, she is in the Choose Strong Strava group. And she said, this weekend I completed my first ever marathon at Loch Ness in Scotland. I ran the marathon to raise money for Parkinson's UK. My good friend Jamie was diagnosed with Parkinson's in his mid-40s.
Oh.
I started listening to the Choose Strong podcast this year. Sally and Eddie have been my constant companions during my long runs. Knowing I had a podcast saved up would help me get out the door, and their conversation making me smile and laugh along the way. Sally has inspired me so much that I signed up for my first ultra marathon in November. It's also in Scotland. I'm in my mid-40s, and running has now become such an important part of my life, both for my physical and my mental well-being. Thanks to Sally for being such a massive inspiration, and to you both for the company. My life is so much more enriched with you both in it and this wonderful community. Sarah, big props for your marathon in Scotland.
Yeah, amazing. You've been to Scotland before.
I have not. I am Scottish. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. I've never been to Scotland. I've been to Wales.
I thought when you went to Wales, you guys also went to Scotland.
No, I didn't. I wish. Never made it to Scotland.
I thought it was a Scotland-Wales trip.
Nope.
That's wild. How long ago was that trip?
That was 2007, 2008, something like that.
I think, yeah. I can't remember if I only had Mackenzie or if I had Isaiah too.
Yeah. So, Sarah, well done getting that first ever marathon in Scotland. And good luck in November in your first ultra. Pretty awesome. And thanks for listening to us during the training. Appreciate it. All right, the next one is from Sterling Peters in the Choose Strong Strava group as well. He had a Ultra Trail Whistler by UTMB 50K. Oh. Hardest thing he's ever done, cramped at the top and was down, but got her done. He said he had Sally and Eddie in my ears for a good chunk of this and helped me through some bad cramps at 29K, the hardest thing I've endured yet in my first 50K. Thanks to Sally and Eddie for giving me some laughs in some dark times. So, hey, Sterling, appreciate you sharing that. But most importantly, man, congrats on that 50K. That's impressive stuff. All right, last one is from Lena in the Sally McRae Strength Facebook group. She said, today I made one of my biggest dreams come true. I ran my first marathon, even a little further, haha. And I don't know if I mastered marathon training without Sally and Eddie. Listening to their podcast made me realize that I can do hard things and that something is better than nothing. I trained, I raced, and even though just last year I thought I could never run again, I finished. So grateful for the podcast and all of the encouraging stories that I get to read in this group. Lena, well done. Congrats on that. A little further than a marathon, especially since she said she didn't think she could ever run again last year. And then this year she went and did a full-on marathon. So big props to you, Lena. Yeah, pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
It's so impressive. You know, one of the things that I had this interesting conversation with Tim Tollefson when we were doing the Project Mammoth. I think we were just, I can't remember if we were out like on the route like training or if we were actually like in it. But I said, it's really easy when you are surrounded by people that do what you do to forget about the gift and just how amazing it is that you have that ability,
Yeah.
And we were speaking on so many different levels with this because, we've both been competing for the same amount of years, and
Yeah.
it's easy to get really down on yourself when it's like your job and you don't meet your goals. And when you don't meet those goals, you kind of just hang right there. And so I was just highlighting the fact that like sometimes we just need to take a step back and realize like, it's pretty cool that my body can do this. Like, this is pretty awesome that I'm able to traverse this mountain or run this far or do this week after week, year after year, season after season, and realize that it's rare, but it doesn't feel like it because you're around people that do it all the time, right? On that same note, it's understanding that like this is something you do. It does not define who you are. It's just something that you do. And whether you're running your first 5K or you're training for your first 100 miler, these are all personal goals that make up the stories of our life, but they don't necessarily detract from who we are if we don't achieve those goals. But at the same time, like the best thing about achieving those things is what we learn along the way. It's the people that we meet along the way. And, man, having the ability to do these things it really is a gift.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are timid about pursuing a goal, in the physical sense, you have a goal that you're like, man, I've always wanted to run a marathon or a half marathon, or I really would like to jump up to the 100 miler. The only way you're ever going to find out if you can do those things is by trying.
Yep.
And I think for most of us, we all have to be at that place, that starting point, and be okay with what we feel in those moments. And a lot of times it's like, I don't know if I can do this. I actually don't know. And for some of us, we go and try it and we fail the first time. And then we're like, see, I knew it. I can't do it. And now I feel dumb and I shouldn't have tried. And this just isn't for me. And I don't have the right body shape and the time. And sometimes we end up seeing that's kind of how we approach a lot of things in our life. And so I love using races as a way to show yourself how to work through challenges, confidence, what you believe to be true of yourself. And then you just go and you apply that to the rest of your life. And it's pretty cool because you start achieving more.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than being at a finish line and seeing those particular runners who for the first time are completing a distance.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's my favorite thing about finding you at LA Marathon this year. I was just like so overwhelmed with joy and elation. Like, you are a marathoner. Like you did it. Regardless of how you felt, like, it was hard and it was painful and, you had your doubts, like, you crossed the finish line. So, yeah.
I also like how she wrote at the end there. She said she's grateful for the podcast and all of your encouraging stories I get to read in this group. So if you're not in the Facebook group or you're not in the Choose Strong Strava group, you need to get in there because, like Lena said, there's just a ton of great things going on with people posting their training, their races, and what's coming up. And it's pretty cool it's encouraging, like she said, but to read them all and to be encouraged by what everybody's doing. So
absolutely,
get in there. If you're not, you're missing out.
Yeah, fantastic. This episode is brought to you by Lumi. It's officially vacation season, my friends. In fact, I'm really excited to head out to Flagstaff with my daughter. But do you want to know who's not invited along? Body odor. And that's because no matter where I go, I always bring Lumi whole body deodorant with me. It keeps me smelling fresh from head to toe. And did you know that it is clinically proven to control odor for 72 hours? I could basically fly all the way to Singapore and still smell fresh for landing. Now, I'll tell you what, I have been using the body wash and the deodorant I love this stuff, especially because I'm outside all day and I have been traveling nonstop since Western States 100. So this is a must for me. And the cool thing is, too, they have it in travel size for a travel bag. Check out Lumi. We are doing a special starter pack. It's perfect for new customers. We got a special discount, too. But this starter pack, it comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our Choose Strong listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine the 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, that equals over 40% off the starter pack. So use code SALLY, SALLY, for 15% off your first purchase at LumiDeodorant.com. That's code SALLY at LumiDeodorant.com.
All right, let's move on, Sal. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we are going to dive back into the conclusion of Project Mammoth. Now, before we do that, I do just want to give a very concise, clear response to those of you that maybe have not watched the YouTube episodes. I have 2 episodes. There's a third one being worked on, being edited right now. We did a first part 1 podcast here. So Project Mammoth was born out of basically a dream, an idea to create a massive route in the Eastern Sierra. Tim Tollefson, who has been a resident out there with his wife, Lindsay, for almost 15 years. This is a part of what he is just passionate about in life. In addition to this route, I have heard him many times talk about trails that he's trying to get solidified in that area that will connect cities and the smaller villages and just kind of like really bring to light all of the areas that are out in Mammoth and the Eastern Sierra, and not just like the JMT. Tim has trained with Lindsay out there as well, and there's some other fantastic marathon and trail athletes that live and train out there. So it is somewhat of a mecca for endurance athletes, especially here on the West Coast. And it is a place that I have loved since my youth. And that's where I first learned to snowboard. We've had family vacations out there. I, for the most part, would spend a lot of time in Lone Pine, running more up closely to like the Mount Whitney area. Mackenzie spent several years out there with her running team. They would do running camps out there. And so the whole entire project, as it came together, it came together as a kind of a surprise, because at this time last year, I sat down with my sketchbook, which is now completely full, and I mapped out several routes that I would like to eventually do. And, you know, I have been gratefully able to compete around the world and do all the races that I've dreamed of doing. I came into this sport because of my love for the trails and the mountains. I did not come into the sport because I was done running road marathons. I purely love the mountains. Apart from racing or anything else, you know, I've always joked with Eddie, I'd love to live on a side of a mountain in a little cabin and just write and run and be in the mountains. So I do have a deep love for this area. And one of the signatures of my career has been rooted in staying curious about what is possible, about what our body is capable of doing. And I love to showcase that. I love to make content and films about that, because I don't think that it's necessarily unique to me. I think it's just how we're made. We're made strong. We are enduring. We are resilient. And so to be able to display whether it's races or routes to other people and the beauty and the stories that go along with them. That's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm a storyteller. I love to write. I love to speak. And so, in the last couple years, that is why you've seen a lot more content in that area. So starting with the Choose Strong project, and then we did the Grand Slam of 200s. For the past couple years, I have really been excited about growing this interest and really this side of what I'm passionate about. So the end of last year was me working on those projects. I was working on films. I was working on some pretty gnarly, massive routes that I wanted to put together, that I wanted to connect. I had a list of the people that I wanted to work with. We were coming up with budget, potential sponsors. I mean, it is a really big undertaking. It is different from, hey, me and my buddy are going to just go and do the JMT. We're going to go do the John Muir Trail. It is different from that. It's different from just showing up to a race and standing on the start line knowing like, hey, I trained all year for this, and now I'm going to follow some flags and come into aid stations and see my crew 4 times. What I am trying to get good at, because I'm not good at it yet, is coming up with these beautiful routes that we can tell stories about, greater stories that are greater than speed and endurance and I guess like how long it's taking to cover the route. I want to show the beauty and I want to tell beautiful stories. So it's new and it's kind of scary for me because I think on one hand, we don't see a lot of women doing that. But what we have seen in the last year is how quickly our YouTube channel grew. Mm-hmm. So in the time of, I think it took us like 12 months, we're inching toward the 100,000 subscriber mark, which is a goal that we have set for ourselves. And the content is doing well. We have an incredible team that we work with, people that we pay. I think sometimes people forget, like, these are people we pay. And so that's a big piece of it too, is we're trying to build up a business so that we can fund these things. And so because it's just Eddie and I, it is, it's kind of like everything's new and fresh and we're trying to figure it all out. So, we've recently been able to have, a little bit of mentorship in this area with people who are already doing it. And I feel like Project Mammoth was kind of like our first time trying to manage all the pieces. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing in the ultra and the endurance world right now is a lot of brands come in and they cover an athlete at their race and they put out like these 10-minute race profiles on this athlete getting on the, whether it's them getting on the podium or it could be a middle or a back of the packer with a super inspiring story. We're seeing it in a lot of content being released in different ways. And so I'm really familiar with that, but I think what we have wanted to do is just build something that's a little bit different and tell different stories. And on one hand, they appeal to a wider audience. So you don't necessarily need to be a 200-mile athlete or a 100-mile athlete or even an ultra runner. But I think that these stories, they're inspirational, they're interesting, and they're filled with so much beauty. And we hope that whenever you consume any of our content, that you leave encouraged in whatever it is that you are working toward and that it inspires you to keep going. So at the root of why I chose the Project Mammoth, I did pivot for that because it would have been very easy. And Eddie and I talked about this all the time. I could have chosen a route and that I made and made the whole project about me in this route and me as main character. And, I thought we just did 3 films on 3 races that I did. I kind of want to change that up. And so that was also the time when they were like, hey, Inside Tracker was like, do you want this ticket to Western States? So I was kind of playing back and forth with that. Like, wow, I made all these plans for 2024 and like Western States would absolutely like flip my training and my schedule and everything upside down. And, I decided to take a chance and do that. During that time as I was training for Western States is when Tim reached out to me and he said, I've been thinking about doing this route for a couple of years. Sally, you have just finished running 4 200-mile races. In his words, you're kind of the queen of 200s. I think you would be the perfect person to run this route. That's not a distance that Tim is looking to do. That's not a distance that, that he wanted to do like all at once. I was like, dude, let me do it all at once. I'm sure that we could have both done it over several days. But at the end of the day, it was saying, hey, I'm going to come alongside you in this dream that you have. As we all know, Tim Tollefson is the RD of Mammoth Trail Fest. And so he has created all these races, this beautiful festival in Mammoth Lakes, California. People come from all over the world to race. The Golden Trail World Series Championships is there. That's one of the races. All the races there are short distance. And so what we thought would be really fun is if I ran the route while Mammoth Trail Fest was going on. And originally, I would then finish in the village, run through the finish line. And then we were going to announce this route. Now, what Tim decides to do with it, I don't know, because I keep telling him I think it should just be a permanent trail called the TTT, the Tim Tollefson Trail. Much like the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc is a permanent route that goes from Chamonix into Italy and then into Switzerland and then back into Chamonix. I feel like that, this could be a route that just stays there forever. And it's like, yeah, you could go do the JMT or you could go do the TTT, and they take you through different environments and terrains. And so I think it was just more of like, telling this story of Tim, his passion, his life out there training, his love for the trails and the community and growing that, and seeing if this route could actually make sense, because right now there's not a defined permanent route that connects all those areas. And I think Tim's going to do something great with this route. So if I were you, I would just kind of keep up with the Mammoth Trail Fest site or Tim's Instagram account. But I'm very removed from whatever happens with the trail. Tim has been my friend for a long time. And I just thought, I love the Eastern Sierra. Let's showcase the beauty. Let's showcase what it looks like and what it takes to actually put and link together 200 miles of trail. It's not easy. And I think on the other side, what we're seeing in the sport of ultra running is the 200-mile distance is growing. It's becoming more and more popular, and I think it's being open to a wider audience too. I love that we're seeing a lot of thru hikers jumping in these things, because you get 5-6 days to cover a lot of these races. And so there's more people coming into ultras. And I think that just being able to tell the story of endurance, of distance, of dreaming, as Tim and I said throughout the effort, it's a mammoth-sized dream. And there's a lot of things that you can do with it. So whether this becomes a race or it just becomes this permanent route that I think he should name after himself, that people can go and do. So you can go on Tim's website, or, you can arrive early before Mammoth Trail Fest and go out with your friends and do, certain parts of it. That's kind of like what I see at UTMB week is people will go out and they'll do sections of that route. I just think it's super cool what he's creating. And I love showcasing the idea of just creating something beautiful, not because it needs to have this an end game to it. It's just like, that's the part of being a human. You can make something super cool and you can make it beautiful. And in this case, I think it's going to bring in, a nice a nice community that's going to want to connect those trails. Because there's a lot of people that love that area. I mean, people come from all over the world to get up on Mount Whitney and climb Mammoth and go to Twin Lakes and get on the JMT. And I just think this is another route that Tim has added out there that no one's ever done. And for Eddie and I, this was going to be a big investment, because as I talked to Tim, and I was like, well, if I do this, I would love to create a film on it. I would love to put some content behind it and kind of just like tell a story. So I think maybe that's where, there have been a few people that are like, I don't understand the project. And I saw something in the Choose Strong community group. Everyone's like trying to like make sense of it. And I was like, let me step in and explain it to you. And at the end of the day, it's, I know it's different from me racing. And I think, people are used to seeing me always signing up for a race and preparing for a race. And I am doing what I've always done in my career. And I am paving my own path, writing my own story, and doing things in a different way, built out of love for the community and the mountains. And in this case, I'm telling a friend's story about this dream of creating a massive route. And it was a huge privilege for me to be the first person to connect the whole thing and run it. But I'm done with it. Like there's no other pieces attached to it. We have a film coming out in December that's going to be beautiful, and I'm very excited about it. There is another YouTube episode coming out probably next week that showcases some of my training out there and what went down in the days leading up. But yeah, that's it as a whole, Ed. That's Project Mammoth.
There it is.
Yeah.
Summary.
A mammoth-sized dream.
Mammoth-sized dream.
And being able to see it realized in real life.
Yeah.
So I think what we want to do with this episode, invite you listeners into the story and really what happened in the days leading up, during. I know some people saw a live video. I think Billy and Hillary showed up at the end of the project and did a live stream that was like wild, which just pretty much ended with me collapsing in a heap at the top of Mammoth Mountain. But I thought we could just kind of dive into, we talked about like the lead up in the last episode, but let's just dive into you arriving in Mammoth Lakes along with the whole media team and us pushing play on the project.
Yeah. I came in Monday night and you were in the middle of meeting with everybody, kind of doing the last
Monday
minute.
Late afternoon.
Yeah.
Monday afternoon. Sun was still out.
Early afternoon, late, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so you were in the middle of going through the last minute kind of details and had the whole media team and Tim and Billy, and so everybody was there, and you were just kind of going over the route, going over what's to be expected of them, and kind of putting all your studying and research and training kind of out in front of them that you were doing the past month, and letting them in on kind of because it was all brand new except for Tim, but it was all pretty much brand new for all of us, the route and everything. So you detailed out a nice 8-page, little packet for us on, breaking every 20 miles down, kind of the profile, the terrain and what's around there. And so you're just kind of going over all that, tighten up some stuff Monday night. That's when I got there, and it was Tuesday morning around 9 is when we started, right? So
8:30.
8:30. I was way off. 8:30. Yeah. So, yeah.
There's a lot of pieces, I think, in the training in the long days that I was out there that I think as I got closer to everyone arriving, that I knew were going to be a little fragile. I don't think that I really understood like the heaviness of the responsibility that I was putting on my shoulders until I was looking at our team and I was like, oh no. Eddie is my only physical support.
Yeah.
Last minute, Hillary and Billy kind of got pulled into this new 10K that the Mammoth Trail Fest was doing. And, you know, because I was away for so long, I wasn't in constant communication with the whole team. So some of them arrived and were like, okay, we know that we're shooting. We don't know specifically what we're doing. And Billy and Hillary had said that they would help pace at night. So Billy and Hillary paced like the first night.
Yeah.
And then Billy paced for a portion like the second night. But that's really the only time we saw them up until like the last mile when I was finishing.
Yeah, because Thursday they started getting involved with Mammoth Trail Fest stuff.
Yeah. And I never saw like even the beginning of the course, like I waved to them at a lake. And then I didn't see them until nightfall on that first day. So I ran with Billy and Hillary. They split pacing that first night, which was amazing. I mean, I told them, I was like, of all the times, I just need people at night with me.
Yeah.
So Billy showed up to take over Hillary's pacing at 2 a.m. And which was incredible in the middle of nowhere. You know, that's a lot. You know, especially because they always help out every year at Mammoth Trail Fest, so they had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And then the next night it was totally raining and foggy, and Billy showed up at 1 a.m. In rain and fog to go up Crater Mountain with me, which is super spooky. I was so glad he was with me. But other than that, they had a lot of responsibility, and so I did get a little. I definitely kicked myself because I was like, I should have had one or two other people set in stone to be a support to you, Eddie, and then also a support to me. So Rod, who you guys all know, got second place at Western States this year, incredible athlete who trains with Tim. Rod showed up in the afternoon on Thursday, and he was like, I'll run with you. So he ran with me for a few hours, and then he showed up again at 1 a.m. And paced me 1 a.m. Friday until the sun rose when I finished that Friday morning. So Rod was key. I think Sarah ran with me for a little bit. Eddie, you ran with me for a few miles when I was stumbling and hallucinating pretty bad.
4.5 miles.
Around June Lake. It was not a good sight. But I think I'm starting off there because the emphasis was on creating a beautiful film. And I knew that this was going to be a challenge in of it itself because everybody that was on the team, one, none of them have ever run a 200. They've been around it, but that's very different. Like you do not know what a body is going through and what it feels like. And so what I knew to be true was that at some point, especially once I pass like mile 150, I do have a lot of breakdown mentally, emotionally, physically, and I needed to memorize the course as best as I could so that I would not be a factor in that. Like the direction and what I needed to accomplish, I needed to know that like in my bones. Because on the flip side, I did feel a lot of responsibility for the team getting stuck in the sand because there are some really sandy areas, people getting lost, people getting injured. And there was just a lot of pieces that needed to be managed as we moved along. Now, at the end of July, myself, Tim, and Drew, I flew Drew out from Texas, and we did a scouting trip. We did like this 4 or 5 day scouting trip, and we drove the whole course. So Drew was able to get his eyes on it. He was able to fly some drone, get some shots. Like we got Tim in the car with us one of those days, and we went over kind of how the course would run. And my hope in that trip was to give Drew a chance to kind of dream and think about what he wanted to do. We also put him as lead on the medium team. So Drew kind of acted as lead videographer out there, and probably have been on the course the most, but that's another reason why we brought Sarah in. So Sarah Atara is just beautiful photography in the Eastern Sierra. She has a yurt out there with her husband, and that's where they live part-time. She knows that area really well. And so it was super cool to be able to have her on the team as kind of a support for just like how the Eastern Sierra goes. Like she was able to give a little bit of intel here and there. We brought in Shapiro the Hero is his name on Instagram, but we brought in Matt as an assistant to Drew and Tyler. So Drew and Tyler have been our mainstay the last 2.5 years. They typically just work alone together on all of our projects, but we knew the undertaking of this they needed to have some support. So Sarah and Matt acted as support for Drew and Tyler, they were basically leading up all of the filming. They know me the best. They know how to work with Eddie. We're kind of like plug and play at this point. And we have good lines of communication. And so that was our team.
Yeah.
And so we met on Monday night, and I was going through everything, and I did realize the way I was able to rattle off every section of the trail. I was like, well, the team's kind of fractured in the sense that some of them understand this and some of them don't. We got Drew and Tyler coming from Texas, but Drew has been out here on a scouting trip. Sarah lives out here half the time. This is Tim's home. Matt's up for anything, so he'll be down. And then, we'll get a little bit support from Billy and Hillary in the middle of the night. And so I have been so fortunate to work with, in my opinion, some of the best creatives in this space. And I think that when we were looking at everything that we wanted to do, the reality is there's a business element to it. So you're working with all these contractors, and this is their livelihood. So, and we get asked as people are like, how did you fund this? And I think a lot of people actually think like, oh, you have like so many nice friends. It's amazing you have that much support. And it's like, well, it comes at a price. So I think that, we need to hold big respect. If we have friends that have a talent and they have a business, we can't expect because they are our friends that they're going to do free work for us. So, I've worked at a contractor for a long time, and, sometimes it does get a little bit tricky because people want discounts or they want things done for free, or it's like pretty insulting. Like, I'll give you a bag of coffee beans if you film for me for 2 days. And it's like, well, these are...
What kind of coffee?
Yeah. These are incredibly talented people who are trying to make a living and build a brand and a business out of what they're doing. And we understand that. Yep. So, wanting to have this many people on the team too, we knew that was gonna cost a lot more money as well. So we have been so fortunate as to really grow our business in the past couple of years that has allowed us to have a media budget. That's something that we've never had before. That's also something that's been really important to me when I work with my sponsors, is that I make that a part of my contract. And so over the last few years, that's also a part that's signed into my contract. And it isn't necessarily like a huge budget, but I see it as really important as an athlete to want that support. But when we fund things on our own, we also understand that we have more freedom and we get to kind of do whatever we want. So this was not a cheap, inexpensive project by any means, especially because I was essentially living out in Mammoth Lakes. I think we totaled up the days. It came out to like 29 days. And that alone, that was a nice hefty fee just for me to be out there with lodging and food and time away from, sitting down and doing work. And so, that was a conversation that Eddie and I had to have, which I got his full support. But it was also really exciting because we were like, wow, it's pretty cool to be at this point in our life. And it has not come easy. This is not an overnight windfall of like, oh, it's so easy to build that up. I mean, I actually wrote something. I'm going to share this at the end with you guys because I'd love to share my journey with you. But if I'm breaking it down to something that we can all understand, the best way to do that is in years. And it's been 38 years of working and learning what it is to build something and to earn. And I'm 45 now, and that number sounds huge, but the first time that I made 2 shiny coins was when I was 7, sitting at a dirty desk in a battery factory stamping receipt books. So I will share that later, but Eddie and I really felt it was important to highlight this as we went into explaining the project with you, because it is different from a race than anything we've ever done. And it is something that we're still learning and trying to figure out. We did a lot of experimenting with Project Mammoth, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot about communication and what the team needs. Eddie, you brought up that media book that I had made. So I typed up an 8-page media guide. It was just for the team, and it was a description of the whole course. I broke it up into 20-mile segments, and I made sure to highlight at least 3 points of interest, is what I called it, that they would probably want to capture, whether it was because of beauty or just something interesting, or here's the one way that you can get into this area. So looking back, I wish I could have gotten that media guide into their hands at least a week earlier than I did. The problem that I encountered with this team, I wouldn't say problem, but the obstacle was when you work with people that are so good at what they do, they're going to be booked a lot. So, I mean, they were all traveling all summer. I mean, it was crazy. So, and then I'm in the mountains. So we didn't do Zoom calls and emails and stuff like that. And Eddie was in charge of writing up their contracts, negotiating these contracts, getting people paid and set up in that way. So I think that a lot of things started to come together at the last minute. What I realized what we really needed, what we were going to expect. As is always when we shoot in the mountains, the weather took a complete 180. See, I had been training in like 70 and 80 degree sunny weather. The biggest challenge that I was met with was extremely fast, strong wind. But that was it. The night before the attempt started, which was on September 17th, it was a Tuesday, it snowed. And we then had snow and rain and wind and cold temperatures just for the 3 days that we did the attempt. And then it went back to nice sunny weather. So, you never know what you're going to expect. And I think because this was our first time too, as soon as I finished, it was the next days, I sat down with Drew and Tyler and I was like, tell me what worked, what didn't. And, that's not always easy to hear immediate feedback. I was still insanely exhausted and my feet were puffy and my face was puffy and I had no voice left to me because I had swallowed like all of the Eastern Sierra while I was out there. But that's the only way that we grow, And so we all have high expectations. We like to do good work. And so that was a really great meeting, I think, because, these are things that the general public will never see. They don't hear, they don't know, they don't see those details. I think that it's really common in especially the ultra and trail running community, that we see groups of people go out and they have adventures in the mountains. And, they might make a little YouTube or a reel or something for TikTok and displaying like their fun day or something like that. But we essentially were trying to do something very different on a bigger scale that was going to, that will bring out some very beautiful content. And so when I finally got to see Eddie, I was giving a meeting. So we that was another thing. We got the whole media team a house right there in Mammoth Lakes. It actually fell like on mile 25 of the course. It was beautiful. We were all gathering there. And Eddie comes walking through the door. I'm in the middle of the meeting, and I'm realizing this is the first time I've seen you in like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
And I teared up a little bit, jumped up and gave you a big old hug, and then went right back into the meeting. But yeah, we got back to our house, to our little condo, which was right across the street that night. And Eddie had gotten me some dinner, just went right in to take care of Sally mode as you do. And I looked at him and I was like, my heart is beating so fast. And I said, Eddie, I haven't given consideration to actually what I'm about to put my body through, because I've been so focused on knowing the course, on wanting to be a resource for the media team, on the story that I want to tell, on getting intel and taking notes, that truthfully, I didn't take any taper. There wasn't even like days of downtime. Mm-mm. I essentially was on the route every single day for, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours at a time. And then went straight and did the whole thing right through. And I think the only confidence that I had in doing that was like, okay, I have confidence that I can do this distance because I've done it 4 times and it hasn't even been a year since the last time I did the last one. So we started this one and we've now done 5 in 11 months. And so I was confident in going the distance, but I was nervous about the fact that I had around me a whole team that was focused on media, focused on capturing the beauty in the story. And then you were the lone person to kind of look out for me, to keep me centered, to take care of me physically. And we were going into some very wild weather. And that made me just a little uneasy, but at the same time, one of the things I relied on was we're not working within race parameters, boundaries, or rules. And so whenever we have reception, we can call.
Yeah.
Whenever we have reception, I can say, hey, can you drive back and like bring me something to drink? Or like, hey, I need to take care of this blister, which we did do that several times. Yeah. Which I really appreciate. And there were moments too where the car could drive alongside me for a few miles, and where the team just felt like they had that freedom to, kind of hop around in a way that they wanted to and get to me in a way that they wanted to. But I think where I messed up was I could have done better at having like, let's for sure meet here. Let's, no matter what, get to this spot. Mm-hmm. In my mind, I thought, I'm going to see you guys so much that we can kind of just do it on the fly. Let's pray. I think the Glass Mountains was the only section that we were very well planned for, that because we knew that we would lose all reception, and the only way you guys could see me was by my spot tracker. But outside of that, everything around it was kind of on the fly. And I thought maybe you could kind of touch in on your experience on that, because it was very different from being crew chief at Moab 240.
Yeah, it was tricky in the sense that, at these ultras that are a race, you have very set aid stations. You have certain, I think you mentioned at the beginning, you have these 8 places you get to see your runner as crew, and when they can pick up pacers and when they can't. So the tricky part was in this, I guess the trickiest for me was, I didn't actually realize that it didn't click until I was actually in it. But, doing these attempts or adventures on your own, and you don't have the assistance or the structure of a race, is that it's on you as crew to provide what these aid stations provide, right? So, there have been plenty of times this past year in your races where you couldn't eat anything that I had, right? Where I was like, this is all I have, some broth, I have, potatoes, whatever, but none of it, you're like, no, I can't. But the aid station had a grilled cheese, or the aid station had a quesadilla, or whatever. They had something, and you're like, yes, I can do that. So, there was none of that, right? That wasn't an option. So I had to basically be the aid station, right? So anything and everything that I had was the only thing that you could have. And another thing that hit me was, not only in these races do you rely on the aid stations to give your runner what you need, but but also your pacer, because your pacer's been out there for 25 miles with you, and they come in and they need stuff. They need food. They need to be replenished. They need new water. Like all of that stuff fell on me also, right? So, which was fine.
Yeah, you did a great job with that.
But it was also one of those things where, man, those are things that you don't think of in a race setting, because the aid stations have it dialed. They have a grill. They have tons of volunteers offering watermelon and whatever, medical. Medical. And the pacers are, I mean, half the time in these races, the pacers come in. I never even see them when they come into you, because I'm working with you and they're getting all their needs met at the tent, right? And then they come and they're, all right, ready for the next section. But for this one, that was the tricky part for me, because it did kind of land on me to be all of that, I guess, out of the back of the expedition. Mm-hmm. So that part was a little tricky for me. And I think another part was, I don't know, that was probably my mistake, but I had a differing GPS map than you had at some points, where I think I had the old one and you guys tweaked it and I didn't have the new one. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go here, but you weren't going to be there. And so I was trying to talk to the media team. So that was a little tricky. But it wasn't a huge deal, because I always knew where you were based on GPS. Another thing too, I thought was a little tricky not being in a race setting was, if I'm driving to a certain section in a race, I'm linking up with other crew, right? I'm following them, or they're asking me questions. Hey, don't park there, park over there. You had this kind of back and forth, or you get to an aid station, you get to kind of hang out with, some people and chat with them. All of that I didn't have either. So that was kind of a bummer, because you're out there literally by yourself on your own. Mm-hmm. I mean, apart from some media team, but they were doing something completely different than I was. Mm-hmm. So those I think were the biggest in terms of trickiest things to navigate on my end, which aren't, at the end of the day, aren't a huge deal, but they're definitely different than while in a race setting. Mm-hmm. But
I'm going to dive into just start to finish, and I'll probably run through this actually. I think it'll go pretty quickly, and we'll just kind of talk about some highlights as to how this went. So it was so important to me that Tim starts with me and that he finished with me. Yeah. Essentially, this is his route. It was his dream. But if you can think of Tim Tollefson as the RD of the Mammoth Trail Fest, that people are arriving on Tuesday. People internationally are arriving. And I told Tim, I was like, hey, we should start Tuesday morning, because the first of the events were starting Thursday, Friday. And I was like, let's start Tuesday morning. And he had wanted to start in the village. And I was like, please do not let us start. Please don't make me start in the village, because we kind of need to keep this quiet. Mm-hmm. And I would love to not have eyes on what it is that we're doing. When we woke up on Tuesday morning, Eddie, I know it had been cloudy, cold, snowing in the outer areas. It was the most beautiful bluebird, crisp, sunny day. Mm-hmm. It was a gift. And I kept telling Tim that I'm like, this is such a gift, because the following days were not like that. Yeah. So the start of our project, I said, can we start a little bit in the forest? So we walked out of the village, across the bridge, and, we kind of met on the bridge and then walked on to the dirt. And then that's where we started. It took us a 8.5 mile route up to the top of Mammoth Mountain, and we actually shortened that section. I mean, Tim, for one, needed to get down and get some work done. But this is a really beautiful route, and I ended up taking that at the end too. So it was the same route up we started as we finished with. But the entire climb up was it was jaw-dropping gorgeous. We just could not believe how clear and beautiful it was all around us. And when we got to the top of Mammoth Mountain, never have I been on top of that mountain with it being completely void of wind. I couldn't believe it. Mammoth Mountain is over 11,000 feet high, and every time I'm up there, the wind is ripping and very strong. And we got up there, and our rock star crew, I mean, I can't say enough about this media team. They are all athletes. They are incredible endurance athletes. They are up for anything, in any weather, any terrain.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are carrying up heavy equipment. I mean, they had to do like a 3-mile, 2,000-foot climb. Did you see what Matt was carrying?
Yes, I was just going to mention that.
We got to put a picture of this. I have a picture of Matt.
Yeah,
Matt Shapiro carried the biggest rig. This thing was massive. It was so big that even I think Tyler and Sarah were laughing at him. Like, we can't believe you brought that up here, Matt.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about how massive that thing was, and I never saw him that morning until I just saw a picture of it like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
That thing was huge.
It was huge. And I was like, did you go up, if you are familiar listeners, did you go up Dragon's Back Trail with that? He's like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, you are a legend.
Yeah, him and Tyler both said that later that day when I asked him, hey, how'd it go that morning? They're like, hey, that was rough. Like, that was, my legs were
Well, Tyler
sore.
had a huge tripod too. He had like a no joke giant tripod. So I was just right off the bat, I'm like, yeah, this is why we hired this team.
Yeah.
Like, what they are up for and what they are capable of doing is just next level. So, you know, I really do love to highlight all of them. I mean, you think of what Billy has done in the endurance world, the beautiful films that he's put out. He's an incredible storyteller. Hillary's an amazing photographer. They were not part of our paid media team. They were definitely there as my friends, support, and pacers in those first 2 nights, which completely saved me. And I had the most fun with them. I think I talked the entire time that they both paced me. That's when you know you have good pacers. Is amazing conversation the entire time. So it was a huge gift to have them. But had they been able to be out there as additional media, I mean, that's off the charts incredible.
Yeah.
But the 4 that we had, so Sarah, Matt, Tyler, and Drew, it was really beautiful to watch them in their element. And it did make my heart happy knowing that they had a lot more freedom than they're used to when they work within the race parameters. Mm-hmm. So Tim and I got to the top, and then as soon as we started descending, we started running into people. Now, Tim's like the mayor of Mammoth, in my opinion. He knows everybody, but we both, between the 2 of us, I think we ended up stopping for over 20 minutes to talk to people. And Tim looks at me, he's like, okay, I thought that it wasn't a big deal that we needed to start on Tuesday, but I can see now you are right. We need to get down the backside of this mountain and out of sight. And I'm like, yeah, like we can't keep stopping and taking pictures and talking to people. I mean, it was super fun. And for those of you listening that came upon us, I may have fibbed a little bit and just said that we were doing a photo shoot with Sarah because we needed to keep moving. But I made sure to tell Tim, I was like, Tim, look at what you've built. Like, we have this whole community of trail runners that are running up the backside of this mountain. They all know you. And they're so thrilled to see you. And that was just a super cool moment. So I got to run the first, like, almost 10 miles with Tim. He then veered off and, you know, jetted back down to Mammoth Village to manage all of these races and events and volunteers and runners coming in. It was pretty incredible to have him for that section. Mm-hmm. I then made my way around the Twin Lakes, which is just such a beautiful section. So the first 20 miles is just, first 25 miles, you're in alpine, you're on single track, it's technical, you got lakes everywhere. I mean, it is, when you think of the Eastern Sierra, when you think of Mammoth area, that's just the cream of the crop right there. That's why people go.
Yeah.
I then made my way now down towards, we're heading toward Convict Lake. Convict Lake is a very popular area. And my goal was to get to Convict Lake before it got dark. That was the hope. Get to Convict Lake before it gets dark because we wanted that beautiful imagery. It's just
I was going to say that
stunning.
That lake was my favorite by far.
Yeah.
Just the way, so the lake is pretty there, but the way like when you came down, you came over that like ridge and it was like brush and you know, dried up, whatever. And then there was like this mountain range, and then it was like a contrast, and then there's like this other mountain range that was like awesome. I mean, and so all these different, and it was like hitting at like perfect time in terms of like right before night. But man, that part was beautiful.
We'll put a picture in here right now if you're watching on YouTube.
Plus, that's where I saw a bunch of deer. So
there's deer that live there. I put that in the media guide. I said, watch out for the deer. they love to walk in the street, and they do. They hang out in the street and just right there on the side of the road.
Yeah,
So,
Matt got really close to one, took some cool pictures of
Yeah.
it. Just kept getting closer, and he was just looking at Matt. And yeah,
they're
it's
very
pretty cool.
used to people. So
Yeah.
that whole area, so you have Mount Morrison, you have Laurel Peak. There's a lot of red and purple in the mountains.
Yeah,
And
it's
so as
pretty.
the light moves across it, it is stunning. It is a sight to behold. And of course, I got so giddy knowing that, our incredible photographers and videographers were getting that. Tim said over and over, I want the course to be a main character. And I was like, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like displaying the beauty in this area. It was amazing. But I was so delighted as I ran toward that way. Billy and Hillary came driving up, and I was like, yes, like I get to run with Hillary. And so her big old smile came beaming through, and she hopped on the trail with me right there. And Tim, I had a spot tracker. Thank you, Eddie, for being a champion and picking one up at REI, setting up the whole entire thing. I got a phone number, everything. We had a link. So when I was out of phone reception, the team could follow along and see where I was. Well, Tim saw where I was, and he was driving home from work. He lives in Lake Crowley Lake area, and he pulled off and he did the loop around Convict Lake with us in his nonetheless like Crocs. It was so funny.
Crocs, yeah.
It's just a little 2.2 mile loop around the lake, and I was like, jump in with us. So me, Hillary, I mean, it was all of us. I mean, it was like 6 of us with cameras, and we were laughing and talking. And then when we got back, Eddie, of course, had some pizza for me and really delicious food. And then it got dark, and it got real dark, pitch black dark. And I got to run with Hillary, who is, she's a phenomenal athlete, an amazing mountain athlete, really good climber. So that was really special, being able to run and just chat with her. And we continued on through the night. And then at around 2 a.m., Billy hopped in, and this is where we entered the Glass Mountains. Now, if you are not familiar with the Glass Mountains, they are pretty much, for the most part, an untouched area. When people come into, the Long Valley area and, the Eastern Sierra and Mammoth, people typically don't go to the Glass Mountains. I was very excited that Tim included this in the route. This is where it makes it circular. So we're now making a circle. We're heading back toward Mammoth Lakes. That's the goal. So the Glass Mountains is a beautiful range. Its highest peak is actually taller than Mammoth Mountain. And so, Billy and I ran through the night, watched the sunrise, watched a shepherd herd a ton of sheep on the side of this mountain. We both laughed and said, are we in the Alps? Like, where are we? I'll actually give a little video of what we saw of these sheep. It was the most beautiful thing, because as the sun comes up, I was able to look back. Now I'm roughly 80-ish, almost 90 miles into this route, and able to see all of the mountains that I had run through, how far I had come. I'm looking back at Mammoth Mountain, and it was just such a sight to behold. And then we broke into the forest, and that's where I saw Eddie for the first time. I changed some clothes, had some food. At this point, I did have a handful of blisters. They weren't terrible. I'm going to say that. They weren't terrible. I know people want to know how my feet did. In my opinion, I think that they were an 8 out of 10. The thing that was a concern was just there was a lot of sand. There was a lot of volcanic fine dust and pumice and granite. And so I made a very foolish mistake and did not bring my gaiters. I don't know what I was thinking, training out there like that entire time. Like, yeah. I never wore them. And yeah, that was a mistake. This route, you need to wear gaiters. So because of that, I would have to stop, empty my shoes. I'd have to change my socks every time. But I had some areas on my feet where the dirt had grinded up a little bit. But yeah, I had a handful of blisters. It was fine. Like, I think at the degree and the level of intensity of the blisters that I had last year that turned into open wounds and ulcers, it's weird how my brain kind of processed the blisters this time. I didn't let them bother me at all. Like, when I would change my shoes and put the socks on, tend to the blisters a little bit, I'd have about 2 minutes where it was uncomfortable, and then we just kind of moved on from that. So they were never an issue. It was just something that I needed to change my shoes and socks because of the terrain. And that's kind of the way that I connected with it. Feet are fine. I ate really well too.
Yeah, you did.
I never threw up. That was one thing that I really focused on in my training was I kept my nutrition simple. So I ate a lot of Go Gels. Bare Performance Nutrition is my nutrition go-to. I really love their stuff. I like to take my flavor, which is the mango, and mix it into water. So I would do that a lot in my training. I use their G1M mix. I use their bars. And then I made sure to purposely work in real food every single day. I was eating pizza and burritos. I mean, I don't typically do that when I'm training for a race, but I do know it is important to train the gut. I've also been working with doctors. I've had a lot of tests and blood tests and different supplements I'd need to get on. We're working on my gut. I think what we noticed at Western States is that was the problem. So system was jacked up. Intestines were in a very, very bad shape. And, it could have been from a lot of the stress that I did in the Grand Slam of 200s. But my stomach was not great for the first half of the year. It has improved greatly. So working with a doctor on that and taking the right supplements every single day that I woke up when I was training, I always started a day with some strong greens and strong reds. That's BPN's version of the green powder. Listen, I know there's lots of brands out there. I'm not saying that what I use is the best. I've used lots of stuff over the 15 years that I've been in the sport. If you want to try what I use, I'll put the link in the bio. You use code Sally, you'll get a discount. But the greens I do help, I believe, help beef up my intestines along with these supplements and just made me feel really great. And I was able to eat burritos, quesadillas, pizza. I mean, you name it. I was fine. Noodles. Yeah. I think the only time I really struggled with nutrition in this was when I was overly tired. And this is the problem of not having physical support for the entirety and having more media, and Eddie being kind of like the lone person. Was I am really good at losing track of the last time that I ate when it's late in a race. So once I go past like 140, 150, it's like, oh, I just ate. And it's like, you literally ate nothing the last 5 hours, but I really believe that I did. And so I did hit a turning point. I think it was on Thursday afternoon. I was hallucinating so bad that I knew I was, and I told the team, I was like, listen, I know I'm hallucinating. But I'm very aware of it. And so I can differentiate. The problem with, as the time went on, was my hallucinations weren't cartoon characters and weird stuff. They were legit real people. And that is where I think I struggled quite a bit. Was I started thinking that there were people in the trees trying to hurt my media crew. So that was a little tough. The turning point. So let's just go back. So we get out of the Glass Mountains. Billy arrives in the rain, like the champ that he is, at 1 a.m. We run into the night in the rain and fog up Crater Mountain. We are so excited to get to Lee Vining because we went to the famous Chevron station there that has incredible food. That is an entry point into Yosemite for those of you listening and are familiar with this area. So with sun rising, Eddie went and bought us breakfast burritos that were incredible. He drove up on the trail behind Billy and I and said, I have breakfast burritos for you guys. He saved the day. And we started to enter into the one area, that I was not able to do recon on because you absolutely needed a 4-wheel drive for the whole stretch of it. And so now we're entering into mile 120, probably, I want to say, 130. And as we were going around, Drew and Tyler were in their Subaru. Eddie turned around and kind of backed up and went to where the next meet point was. So he was going to go to the end of the trail and meet us on the other side. Drew and Tyler stayed with us, and we're getting drone and film and kind of like frog hopping with Billy and I as Billy was pacing me, and we're eating our burritos, and we were in good spirits, and it was really good. And this is where a breaking point hit for me. So I now had been awake for 2.5 days straight. I decided, and would not do this again, to not sleep, not even for 1 minute. I think it was twofold. One, I felt so much responsibility to the team. Two, I believed I could do this route in 70 hours or less, which I still believe that. I really do. I knew the route so well. I knew where I could run for a while. I knew and I think when you know a route well, you're just going to move more confidently on it. So in my mind, if you can do these 200s in better than 72 hours, you can kind of get away without sleeping or very, very, very little sleep. I did not take into account that I was not rested, tapered, or even at 100% when I started this thing. So I went in tired. I went in a little sluggish, but I did go in very confident. And I knew I could cover that course. But I think because I did not go in tapered and rested, I didn't take into account that the cumulative fatigue was going to hit me really fast. And so I think by hour 30 is when I started hallucinating, which is wild to me because that's really early. I shouldn't be hallucinating 30 hours in. So Billy and I we're moving well, and we start descending this trail. Drew and Tyler turn around and they're like, hey, there's a really big water crossing. Like, you might want to just take the trail that's right there. And we could see you guys. We could see all of our media crew. We could see where our endpoint was. It was probably like a couple miles away. It wasn't a big deal. It was a wide open space. I was very confident in the terrain. I was confident in where I was going in. And as Billy and I descended down the alternate route, which I had never been on before, and which I should have not made the choice to do, it turned into basically like this slot canyon, this overgrown slot canyon. And we went deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And then I finally told Billy, I was like, we got to get out of this thing. So we climbed out of it. And then we were in the middle of this field. And the whole field was basically like a pond, like a lake. So now we're completely wet. Now it's like, well, we're wet anyway. Yeah. And we're bushwhacking through thorns and all this. And for whatever reason, between being completely exhausted and feeling this weight of I wanted to be able to make the route beautiful on the map, you know. And now it's like me. It looks like probably what a little kid with a crayon looks like on a map. Like, I'm wandering back and forth. Billy's going one way. I'm going the other. He's yelling to me, come here. We can see our team. I can see Eddie, but we don't have phone reception. Eddie's trying to say, hey, I can't get to, there's absolutely no way I can get to you guys. I'm stopping. We're wasting all this time as I'm opening up my Gaia map. I'm trying to find an alternate route, which I eventually do. Billy goes one way. I go the other. We've added all this time. I'm soaking wet. My feet hurt. I'm exhausted. I get to the car and I break down crying. Mm-hmm. And I then am like, why am I crying? We're not in a race. And that's where, Eddie, you met me. And I think there was some of the guys around. I said, hey, we need cameras away. Everyone kind of needs to step away. I need to talk to Eddie right now. And one of the things that Eddie had told me, Eddie and I had talked about as we drove to start this thing, I said, Eddie, I know that as I get more tired, it is easy for me to lose sight of why I'm out here and really what it is that I want to do. And Eddie and I had a lot of discussions in the lead up to this, and what has been important just across the board for our brand and everything we put out is that we are creating encouraging, beautiful content that's going to help and inspire other people, that reaches communities far outside of the endurance world. And I really believed in this really cool story that we were telling. But for whatever reason, I lost sight of that. And all I could feel was just the weight of the project, that I had failed. And I just kept on saying that. I was like, I screwed this whole thing up. And, being so tired, you can't really think about what you're doing. It's like, you went off course like half a mile. Like when it comes down to it, like you wandered around in a field in between two trails that were very clear that you could see. And, you added on 25 minutes of time, but like, you're okay. And I just, your words were just so clear, and you're just like, hey, remember why you're doing this. Sally, you are very tired and you haven't screwed anything up, and you're okay. Like, this is amazing, and we just need to keep moving forward. And I said, okay. And Matt was supposed to pace me at that time, Matt Shapiro.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, tell Matt I'll meet him in 2 miles. I need to clear my head and put my big girl pants on and just kind of like pray. Like, I need to pray. Like, why am I so upset? Like, I think too, like, in that moment, I'm then upset that I'm upset.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I shouldn't be upset. Like, but I know why I'm upset. You brought me back to my center. And so I headed up the trail, and 2 miles later, Matt hopped in, and he was great conversation and so friendly and kind. And then 10 minutes into our run, Lindsay came out of the middle of nowhere, Tim's wife, and then she ran with us. And then we came upon a lake, and it was like the entire team joined. And it was just, that was the reminder that I needed.
Yeah.
This is why we're out here. We're a team. This is our friends. We're all doing what we love, and we're creating something beautiful. And it's so much more than, a line on a map and what our finishing time is. And, but it did not get easier after that. I think what I remember looking back, that breakfast burrito that you had given me, I gave you back half of it.
Yeah.
I took the other half, and I later found it in my pack. I'd only eaten a few bites.
Mm-hmm.
And what we figured out is I started to drift further and further into hallucinations. I guess Drew and Tyler told me at one point I was talking about DeLoreans or some Back to the Future cars as I left them into the rain. And that's when they sent Rod after me.
Yeah.
And Rod found me with a bag of peach rings. Totally revived me. Totally revived me. I ate the whole bag of peach rings. And then we dropped down into June Lake, this beautiful area. And we started climbing up into the wilderness, and the whole media team climbed up with me. I was like, I really want you guys to climb this section. They then turned around at like the 2 mile mark. The sun was setting, and I was going to be all alone in the dark in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. As I continued higher, I got onto this skinny ridge, and I started slipping on snow. And I was like, dang, dude, there is snow up here. And I started kicking myself because I didn't bring my spikes. I didn't foresee that. I didn't think the snow had been up that high. And this is the one section where Tim and I had actually talked about 3 different routes in that area. And so I thought, well, it's pitch black. We have fresh snow. I'm on this skinny ridge. And I think what I'll do is I'll drop down and I'll just do the alternate route. And that's where I was also able to run with you, which turned into being the best decision because I, at this point, was inching toward about 65 hours of no sleep. Yeah. And we calculated a very, very low calorie intake from me. Those are, again, those are the pieces where had I had physical support with me, and there's some, you even brought up Dave Daly and Colin Cooley, how perfect they would have been because they were always on top of that stuff whenever they were on the crew. Mm-hmm. They will look at the wrappers and be so in tune with like, you need to eat and drink. And so we kind of hit this breaking point, and you and I got onto the road, and it's starting to rain again. And you messaged the team, I think it was, and got food for me, which was huge. So they found us on the road. I think I stumbled. I don't really remember a lot of the road, but I think there was a lot of stumbling on that road section with you, which made me sad too because it was at night and it was the only section I got to run with you, right? We are now at like mile 170 at this point. Mm-hmm. And how was that pacing me in that?
Yeah, so 170, and you were on the road that kind of parallels June Lake, and I was in my car and watching you with your poles and stumbling along. I was like, this is not safe, and it was pitch black, and there weren't a lot of cars, but there were definitely cars ripping through, around that curve there. And there wasn't a lot of shoulder for you to run on, so it just wasn't safe. And the way you were kind of struggling to stay up was not safe either. So thankfully Drew was able to grab a hot cheese quesadilla and brought it back, and then I just parked my car and just to make sure that you were safe, I just ran with you till we were essentially off the street, and then I did a few more miles behind the lake there, and then
Sarah picked me up.
Yeah, Sarah picked you up late.
Yeah, that was, I think from that point on it was just hard.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on it was like trying to, because when Sarah picked me up and we continued on, so we have 30 miles to go to the finish. I remember at one point as she picked me up, because I think the problem that we noticed a lot, like in the 200s, if I didn't sleep at all, was just like, I was aware when my mind was at war with me, and I would go in and out of it. So I'd be totally fine. And then I would have like some weird hallucinations, or kind of just like, I'd be talking, but I didn't know what I was talking about. And I'd be like, wait, how long have I been talking? So I told Sarah when she picked me up, I was like, listen, I've been trying to get calories in. I want to apologize in advance if like I start babbling, but like we need to keep moving. And I know that eventually these calories are going to hit, and I'm going to be okay. Obviously it's hard because I'm, continuing to push. I was so adamant about like, I know I can finish this in time and then I'll sleep.
Yeah.
I need to know what's going on. I knew that Rod was going to meet up at 1 a.m. Rod's so funny too. He was on a date. So he left me the first time he paced me, and then he left. He's like, I got to go on a date. And he's like, and then I'm going to come back and I'll find you at 1 a.m. And so we were just totally giggling about that. But I was telling Sarah as we ran along, and Sarah's so gracious and kind. And I've known Sarah for like over a decade. And she is just such a sweet friend, and I really enjoyed my time with her. But at one point, I was telling her our engagement story, and in the middle of it, I became so embarrassed, and I go, Sarah, she's like, what? Why am I telling you this story? I go, please tell me that you asked me about it. Like, I'm so embarrassed that I'm just sitting here telling you my engagement story. And she just started laughing. She's like, no, I was actually talking to you about Catalina. And then you had said that you got engaged there. But then I was like, but why am I telling you the longest story ever about my, like, so just stuff like that you're talking, you're moving, and then you're like, wait, how did I get here? Why are we talking about this? And just having kind of that frustration. When Rod picked me up at 1 p.m., he and I then climbed up to Obsidian Dome, which is it is a sight to behold. But we climbed into Obsidian Dome, and then the entire time he paced me, I kept telling him, I feel like we're not going anywhere. I feel like we're just like stuck in these trees, and that you keep bringing me back to Eddie. Like I would say that to him. It felt like we weren't going anywhere. And then all of a sudden you would appear. I'm like, we literally were just here.
Well, to your point, I mean, a lot of that was very similar in that stretch where where I was able to see you next, it did look very similar
like the
to
campgrounds,
the
right?
Yeah,
like the campgrounds looked the same. And then we were like, it was doing a number on me.
I bet, yeah.
And but Rod stayed with me the whole time, all the way until sunrise.
Yeah.
And we were at mile 193 at 8:30 in the morning. So we hit the 72-hour mark at 193 miles. I was super disappointed in that. At this point, Tim and I had kind of played around with how it would end. He joked with me one day, like, how amazing would that be if you could finish on the top of Mammoth Mountain? One of the reasons why we started off on Mammoth Mountain, because it's like, dude, that's the toughest climbing. Like, it's the highest point. Like, let's get that done in the beginning. Finishing on the top of Mammoth Mountain would just be cruel and brutal. But the thing is that this whole time, Hilary's race directing the 10K. Billy's out there supporting Tim. Tim's running all of these races. He's like cheering every single finisher across the finish line. He's putting medals on people. He's managing everything while I'm, going around this course. And you and I, so Rod leaves, Drew and Tyler leave, and you and I are in the forest we had talked about this route, that the way that I was going to be going, it was probably going to be about 207 miles. So I was like, yeah, I'll probably have anywhere between like 12 and 14 miles left to go, which I knew that terrain. I had run that part like a couple times. I was going to run it by myself and I was going to be okay. But we did kind of chat about it. I was like, oh man, like we're going to finish in the village around so many people, and I had been out there by myself for so long. And, on a very personal level, it was like, this was a really precious like project. And on one hand, I was like, it'd be kind of weird. Like all of a sudden I come just busting through the finish line, like this like haggard person. And I really wanted to finish with everyone. I wanted the whole media team to run with me. I wanted, we were hoping that Billy and Hillary and Tim could come back and run through us. I was adamant at the bare minimum. Tim absolutely needs it, as long as he's there. Yeah. Even if it's just he and I, he needs to finish this. Yeah. He needs to finish this with me. I don't care if it's the last 100 meters. And so you and I are standing there, and I'm like, oh yeah, and Drew is here too, because I was like, all right, we can turn around and we can try and finish this before too many people get into the village. It was like 7:30 in the morning. I knew that one of the races was going to start soon. So I was like, well, we could probably finish right on the nose at 200 miles if I take this route, and that's how we'll finish. We'll 200 miles, finish at this time. Then that's kind of like what we decided. Everyone dispersed. You're like, all right, I'll try to go to like a next spot to see. I'll kind of figure out where I can see you, which was kind of like, unfortunately, the poor Eddie was always like, okay, I'll try and like figure out where to see you now. Yeah. 3 days straight. And I'd say that Eddie maybe got a total of 9 hours of sleep all those 3 days. So he was the rock star aid station king too, because you were feeding and everybody on our team in addition to me. But I left, and within like 5 minutes, our group chat went off. I think people were talking about me finishing, and Tim was trying to figure out when I would finish, and that was really important that we would be there. And he basically said, Sally, I'm going to be up here until like noon at the top of Mammoth Mountain. Yeah. And he's like, why don't you finish on the top of the mountain? Which sounded so horrific to me.
Well, in his text, it was a sarcastic, hey, you can always finish up here, summit the mountain again. Yeah. But it was more of like there's no way you're going to do that.
Yeah, because we had talked about it, and I did play around with it. I did say to him, okay, I'll think about it. I go, let's just kind of like see what state I'm in, because it's true. If I was in a really bad way, it probably would have been wise for me too. And so I was like, you know what? One, I can't just like go finish randomly in the village without Tim.
Right.
Tim needs to be there.
That'd be weird, yeah.
2, Drew would be off the charts, so stoked to get that footage as the finish line, as opposed to like a crowded village. Finishing on the top of a mountain, this beautiful, picturesque view.
For a film,
this intense climb up. So I told myself, do not think about it, just say yes. And so I said, I'm climbing to the top, and everyone was like, wait, what? I was by myself, kind of wandering around, and then Eddie was like, dude, you need to like, where are you? You're like in the forest off the route. I was not in a good way. Let's just say that.
Well, and I couldn't get to you. You're like, where are you? I'm like, I can't get you at a 2-wheel drive, and it was a 4-wheel drive, definitely. 4-wheel drive, like sandy, soft.
So we're just going to say this. It took Eddie and I an hour and 45 minutes to find each other.
Yeah.
It was rough. Which of course, like in my mind, like was so frustrating to me. I'm adding on all this time that I could have been climbing up the mountain, which was just across the road. And so I was then able to, we were able then to find the base of Mammoth Mountain. And then that's when I started climbing up, and Eddie was going to get the team and take the gondola up to the top. And, I wasn't in a good place to make any plans or organization or anything. I know you had to tell Drew what was going on. Thankfully, Drew, having been with me for all my 200s, having seen me in some really bad state of mind, felt so compelled that this has nothing to do with the film. I need to go find Sally. And thank goodness that he did, because I started out on the right trail. And if you've ever been out on Mammoth Mountain, and this, like, hallucinating or not, it is confusing at the bottom of Mammoth Mountain. It spiders off like all over the place. And the thing is that Tim and I had changed the route like that morning that we were going up, and it was just more efficient for us to not do the 13-mile route that we were originally going to do, which kind of climbs the front, climbs the back, comes around the front. It's a little different. This one is really extreme switchbacks up more of like the face of it. It's a lot steeper. It's like 8 miles. And so I was trying to figure out like which way that was. And I started going in the exact opposite direction. I was going like towards the lakes. Thank goodness. All of a sudden I hear Drew's voice. He's like, Sally. And he's just kind of like, you just see it on his face. Like, we need to get you up there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. I go, I'm really confused. Like, I know where I am, but I just like, this doesn't make sense to me, because Tim and I went this way, but I cannot remember like if we went right or left. And I'm looking up at the summit, and it just isn't like making sense. And so he was like, just follow me. Just follow me. And so Drew did all that heavy lifting work as my pacer up the top of the mountain. It would have been several more hours of me like figuring out that, oh man, I'm on the wrong trail. And I think too, it was just me coming in and out. Like, my brain was so tired. My body was strong though. My body held up really well. Knees, ankles, IT bands, back, like, I was pretty strong. I think what ended up happening was like the last mile and a half, Billy appears. And Billy is, amazing cheerleader, friend, so excited, so enthusiastic. And, all the time before that, like Drew and I had been very like quietly, methodically, like making our way up the trail. So then Billy appears, and I hadn't seen Billy in, it'd been almost 2 days since I'd seen him, day and a half, like since I had seen him. And he's just like, everyone's at top. Like, people are waiting for you. He's bringing the hype. And like, it was like so startling for me too, because I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And he's like, we have a big celebration. And I was a little hesitant on that. I was like, I'm not looking for like a big celebration. I just would love to like finish with my team, finish with Tim, and, really make this special. So as we got up higher and higher, more and more people some people I hadn't ever seen, started to appear. And it's like cameras. And then all of a sudden Hillary starts a live feed. And then it's like, people are telling me to put one foot in front of the other and how to breathe. I mean, it was like, what is going on? Like, and I'm just like trying to focus on what I'm doing. My brain's not organized at this point. And so I made myself just hunch over and look straight at the trail, because anytime that I looked up, it was just chaos. It was very loud. There was a lot of people saying things and cameras, and there was so much going on. And it was such a weird space to be in, because it was so different from a race, right? It was so different from, you're hitting all these aid stations with your crew and pacers, and it's exciting as you get to the finish line and you finish, and there's a buckle and a medal and all of that. I think it was the culmination of weeks, months, dreaming of this and hoping to complete it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we got higher and higher, I mean, Billy was pulling out everything he possibly could to keep me going. It was so funny. He was like, there's a bed at the top. And he's telling me all these lies. So I'm like playing back at him, like bantering, like, hey, Billy, do you know that song? Tell me sweet little lies. And I go, that's you right now. And so we had a lot of fun leading up. And then Tim came into view, and then you and Tyler and Matt and Jamil was up there. And yeah, it definitely turned into like an incredible celebration, and so much joy at, I really was just so happy to see Tim's face. I think he was welling up with emotion. And at one point he says, you know, this is a dream realized. And, and I said, we all got to finish. We all got to go through that finish line together. And so we all ended up going to the finish line. And I think that my mind and body knew that we were done. And I think I stood for a little bit, and then I just couldn't stand anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to lay down so bad. And
I think you felt instantly asleep too.
Yeah, I may have felt instantly asleep for a couple minutes.
And then we had to wake you up because they're like, hey, they're holding the gondolas for us.
So that
for
was
another
amazing.
30 minutes.
So the whole entire trail system and the rangers and everyone on the Mammoth Mountain was so supportive of what we were doing. They kept the gondolas open for us, which is huge. But, you know, our finishing live feed crew and the excitement, you know, that was such a joy. It really was a joyous way to, you know, finish that project. And just to see the look on Tim's face, this dream that he, I love this picture too. I'm going to give you this picture of Tim looking out. It was shortly after I had crossed the finish line, and it's him looking out on the course and realizing what he had dreamed up in his mind, came to life. And, you know, there's something about supporting our friends. There's something about cheering other people in their dreams and what it is that, you know, might seem too big or impossible. You know, we always said it was a mammoth-sized dream. And not only that, I think when we took our finish line photo, man, I just looked around. I'm like, look at this crew. Yeah. You got like some of the most incredible talent for one, and just the friends, you know, having Tim and Billy and Hillary and Drew and Tyler and Sarah and Matt and you, Eddie. It was, I think I'll cherish that picture forever because it is rare that we all get to be together. Like I said, because these are people who are the best at what they do, and they're really good at what they do. They, you know, they're traveling the world and pursuing their dreams and working for, you know, for big brands and on big projects. And I just felt like, man, this is such a gift that we all got to experience this together. And, but I think, you know, for us personally, it was a huge learning experience. We learned a lot when we were out there. We learned what it is to, you know, to put something together on this level and execute it. And, you know, to our listeners, was it done well? I think we did a pretty good job. But I do like using this as our platform, our base in which we can do better. Yeah. And execute better on in so many ways. And that's really what's getting me excited about 2025 is I have all these ideas and projects and stories and locations and it's a new season, and I feel like we're kind of living the dream here. I hope at some point I get to pull this crew all together again. Man, that was a gift. And what they all had to endure. I mean, you have to remember when a media team is out there, they're trying to capture some specific things. So yeah, they're capturing the beauty, but there's also a story that has to be told. In every story, there's elements. And so they're going to be out there when I'm tired. They're going to be out there when it's hard, when it's challenging, when the weather is changing. And so, you know, they're out there weathering right alongside me. We made the team big because, unlike in the 200s in the past, I sat down with Drew and Tyler. I said, it is really important that all you guys sleep. I need you to sleep. You're creators. You need to do your best work and support each other in that. And I was happy to hear that they were able to give each other breaks, you know? So, that worked out really well. But, you know, what a rock star team. What a mammoth sized dream, and, a dream come true working on it. Mm-hmm. But I do want to end with this, because one of my first posts that I did after I completed Project Mammoth was about the lonely hard work. And this messaging kind of came to me when I was out there. And I realized, like, man, this is so different from training for a race. This is so different what I'm doing when I am going into an organized event that is laid out before me with aid stations and medical and rules and a race booklet and a podium. This is trying to put together something that I've never done before. But I also feel like I have a lot of responsibility. I wanted to do well for Tim. I wanted to be a good representation of his dream and this course. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to do diligence and do good work. And I think there's a lot of cool pieces that will continue to come out of this and things that I've learned. And but I think it also allowed me to be very reflective just on my life and realize that a lot of what I'm doing today wasn't because when I was younger, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you are in the middle of mundane hard work, your greatest dreams arise from that. They're realized. You're connected into those dreams because you either connect with other people, you learn a new skill, you're given this once in a lifetime opportunity because you're just in the right place at the right time. And I was looking back on my life and I was like, man, I would have never thought in my wildest dreams that this is what I would be doing. And so I wrote this for you listeners as a way to just encourage you in whatever season that you are in your life. So if you're a high schooler or in college, you don't have to have things figured out, but work ethic, consistency, and discipline, believing in who you are and the value of learning is so powerful. If you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 50s, 60s, I mean, it's okay to give yourself space to think about the next season and to think about the things that you want to do in your life. Yes, you will hit hard times, challenging times. You will have loss financially, in relationships, opportunities. That is a part of it. And I've experienced all of that. I've had some low lows throughout my careers and even as an entrepreneur in racing. I've had some high highs, some dream come true moments and seasons. And I think that's also what keeps me building. What keeps me building is being able to tag back on where I've come from and realize that, wow, I've gone through some really dark seasons, some rough storms, some massive failures. And yet here I am today with the ability to keep working toward all the things that I believe I am capable of, that I believe are a part of my purpose, that I dream of. And I think this is what is so incredible about your unique life, is that you get to work day in and day out on what you choose. And sometimes your work is going to include doing mundane tasks in order to either build up financially, in order to build relationships, to get experience, to do the things that you have dreamed of. And I think that's something that we struggle with in today's world, especially because we're consuming so much content so quickly, and it's so easy to scroll and think that everyone is living this amazing, really fun life and that success happens overnight, and it just doesn't. Like, your best absolute pathway in building the most enduring, strong you it's going to be a long, hard road. And I don't say hard in like a harsh, negative way, but like, real life is hard. Not every day is beautiful and amazing. And so, but it's those hard days that make you strong, that make you resilient and gritty and enduring. And they teach you perseverance. And it's really incredible when you show up for yourself each day, even when you can't see the finish line or you don't understand where you're going, all the things that you are going to start to learn, and the strength that you are going to continue to build, the character that is being carved out. I look back on what I'm about to read to you and I chuckle, because there were some long, long years where I felt stuck and I thought, this is it for me. And had someone flashed a glimpse of what I'm doing today, I wouldn't have believed them. So I am rooting for you always. I believe in you. I hope you believe in you too, because you're worth the work, you're worth the belief, and no one else can get that for you. And it's true that you might feel lonely in that. You might not have a lot of people that are going to stand by you, and that's okay. You're not going to have a lot of people that understand why you want the things that you do or the direction that you're going in, and that's okay too. And sometimes things take a little bit longer. But I'll tell you what, man, when you do get to find one or two people that endure with you, that's a gift. Hold on to those people. I mean, I've said this over and over again. Eddie's my person. Such a gift. And is the reason why I've been able to do many of these things. And so I think that's also at the heart of our podcast and all the content we put out, is remembering that a lot of people are trying to figure out their purpose. They're trying to believe in themselves. They're trying to find that confidence. They're trying to find a reason to move forward. And that is what we hope we can deliver to you. So we're rooting for you and we believe in you. I'm going to read right now what this little thing that I wrote. When I was 7, I stamped receipt books in a battery factory. The coins I received at the end of the day were as valuable as gold. When I was 8, I learned how to put together ceiling fans, screw on electrical covers, and sweep my dad's workspace to prep for his bigger tasks. When I was 9, I learned using a hairdryer to heat up the glue on the back of linoleum tiles made them stick to the floor better. And when I was 10, I earned my first $20 bill after scrubbing apartment building decks with my sister. At 12, I was babysitting weekly and sometimes accompanying my mom to clean the big, nice houses in the area. And at 15, I received my first W-2 after becoming a hostess at Giovanni's restaurant. At 16, I moved cities, and I learned how to make sandwiches and scrub toilets at Togo's Sandwich Eatery. At 17, I watched my mom take her last breath, and then buried myself in work at a coffee shop, a diner, and in the nursery at our church. At 18, I became a server at Ruby's Diner and picked up a campus job at Biola University, giving tours, delivering student gifts, and entering data. From 19 to 22, I held those same jobs, but sought out work in a children's home for the most severely abused children in Southern California. At 22, I became a high school English teacher, a soccer coach, and a wife. And in the early mornings, I'd run, lift, and sigh at the missed opportunities to become a professional athlete. At 24, I moved to Washington, D.C. and worked for a paper company, and then fell into an opportunity to work in orphan and adoption care as a volunteer coordinator, executive assistant, events planner, and ghostwriter. At 26, I gave birth to Mackenzie and wanted to stay home, so I tried a gimmicky MLM for a minute and then went into credit card debt getting my trainer and coaching certifications. I started my own outdoor fitness and running business at 27 and then joined Eddie at the church when I was 30 years old as an assistant to the pastor and women's director. At 32, I went to work for Sports PT and wrote newsletters, built a running biomechanics class, and made relationships with partners in the community. At 33, I took a risk and went further into credit card debt to pursue the possibility of running professionally. At 34, with kids aged 5 and 7, Nike signed me onto the trail team. I continued running my coaching business, and at 35, Nike asked me to be a coach and eventually on their Nike Run Club app. At 36, I was racing around the world, mothering 2 elementary school kids, coaching, and restarted writing my book. At 37, I became an iFit trainer and picked up contract work on Nike photo shoots as a sports tech. By the time I was 42, I won Badwater 135, started a podcast, launched my fitness app, and bought my first house. At 45, I'm an author, celebrating 10 plus years as a professional athlete, growing my podcast, my app, a YouTube channel, an online shop, and now I'm part of a roster of world-renowned speakers. I'm working on a new book, new films, and booking speaking engagements all over the world. And if you ask me how I got to where I was today, I'd likely start by saying, well, I started working for quarters in a factory 38 years ago, and then never stopped working. Friends, you don't know what's down the road. And the only way you're going to achieve the dreams in your head are by putting your hand to the plow and doing the work. It's not always easy. It doesn't always make sense. But I promise you, it's always worth it. So stay sturdy, do the work, and keep choosing strong in all you do.